Hi, everyone. This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and check out our blog, ItalianGenealogy.blog, and our Facebook group, and our great sponsors, Phil Italy, Aviativa Casa, and Italy Rooting. And my guest today is Phil DiNovo, and he's the curator of the American Italian Heritage Museum in Albany, New York. So welcome, Phil. Thanks for being here.
I'm the founder and the executive director.
Even better. That's super. So yeah, I certainly want to talk about the museum, but before we do that, what's your Italian background? Where's your family from, and where did they settle?
Okay, my grandfather on both sides of the family came from Sicily. My grandfather DiNovo in 1901 and my grandfather Scalata in 1905. My mother's family settled in Troy, New York. But my father's father settled in Albany, New York. We're a very large family here in Albany, and now because of the times that we're in, we're scattered all over the country. So we have family all the way over to California, but most of them are here in the East.
Yeah, well, that's true for everybody, right? Everybody dispersed. When we were growing up, everybody was a few blocks away, right?
Right. Same block.
Same block.
Same block. My family was interesting because my grandfather came against the wishes of and he borrowed the money. He was only 19 years old. When he passed away, he left $250,000, 9 children. He was a truck farmer, hard worker, and he really instilled the work ethic in all of his children and his grandchildren.
Well, and I think that's true for a lot of us Italian Americans. They did instill the work ethic. I always tell people my mother there were 9 in the family, and I always say that I had 9 mothers and fathers, and I'm sure you did also, right?
Well, the wonderful thing about it was the aunts and uncles were close, and you had a good support system.
Absolutely. So they came relatively early before the real big waves. Do you know why they came to America, especially your grandfather who came against the wishes?
Because of the poverty, in our museum we show poverty that you wouldn't believe. And when they came here, it wasn't easy, but they were strong-willed, hard workers, and they really took the opportunity and made something of it, So just think of Italy as, even today, is so many of the brain power is leaving because there aren't jobs. And that's difficult because, people need to work and they need the opportunity. And when given that, it shows by our Italian ancestors what they were able to accomplish given the opportunity. The poverty didn't kept them down in Italy, but here they blossomed.
Yeah, and so were they farmers by trade in Italy?
My grandfather, he was smart enough to invest in property as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. He only had a fifth, sixth grade education. But he was smart and he knew how to work hard and to invest and to buy this property. So we never knew poverty in the United States. I mean, we lived well because of being on a farm, of course, the produce and grandma's cooking, and just St. Joseph Day is coming up, and one time I said to my aunt, why didn't we have zeppoli, the rich kind of zeppoli that we buy in Italian bakeries? They were too poor. But people on our street considered us rich. So it's kind of interesting that different people see different things. I never knew what poverty was. We had a good life, middle class life.
Yeah, my father's family was they weren't rich or anything like that, but they were pretty well off. My mom's family was poor, and I remember my aunt telling me that they would get an orange at Christmas.
Now my father said the same thing.
It was a big deal apparently.
Yeah, we're 9 kids. I guess an orange was really a treat.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I heard an interesting story about um a migrant Italian farm worker. I guess he was like a tenant farmer, and he was working for somebody, and the man was selling the farm, and he said he wanted to buy it, but it was $75 to buy the land, and he didn't have the $75, and he told his wife, and she went into the cupboard or wherever, and she had saved every nickel, dime, penny that he would give her, and she had the $75 to buy the farm.
I think, Bob, we could say that in general, Italians are very frugal. Very, very frugal people, even Italian Americans. When I see people wasting so much time and money, I have trouble even at the museum sometimes. People will leave the lights on and there's nobody in the room, and there I am flipping it off. So I think that's one of the ways that we can teach people. Uh, they need to be more careful of how they use their resources. Uh, I see people retiring too early, and the cost of living today, they're making a big mistake. You got to save, and that's something that we don't often see. But Italian Americans, I think, are pretty good savers.
Well, of course, my dad and my mom's family, they went through the crash and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that is different period. My grandfather, I believe, I don't know for sure, but I believe they lost their house. They lived in New Jersey, and I believe they lost their house during the Depression. Oh, they bounced back, of course. I always say that. I wouldn't say my father was cheap, but he was pretty frugal, if you know what I
Ah,
mean.
I get it. Bob, I'd like to just in the one of I publish a bi-monthly newsletter, and I told our people there are 10 important Italian American values: faith, humility, gratitude, work ethic, generous and warm, loyalty, and no excuses, and respect for tradition. And these are values that were handed down to us. I'm having a hard time getting the young people to realize how important those values are and why our Italian heritage is important to keep alive. We're in conflict often with the secular cultures that we face today, because a lot of those values are in conflict with the values that we were brought up.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That goes back to, the 9 sets of mothers and fathers, because, they all had the same values. They were all, hardworking men, and, treated us like gold. But, you didn't dare get out of line because you get in the back of the head, right?
Or a shoe thrown at you, or
Exactly. But I cherish those days, and that's one of the reasons why I do this, because I'm hoping at some point, by interviewing people like you, that if we save a couple of young people and get them to understand and cherish their heritage, I think we've done our job.
well, that's the whole. I've been doing this now for 46 years. And recently, one of my friends visited Italy, and he said that I had helped to instill in him the love of his culture and heritage. And when he went to Italy, of course, he saw what we were talking about. I think that's very, very important. Sometimes you don't see the results, right away. But I tell grandparents, it's your job to teach the young. I think it was kind of interesting in Russia, Christianity was saved by grandmothers. It was forbidden, but grandmothers passed it on. Sometimes I have to urge our members that they're the teachers, they're the ones. You have to be patient, maybe you don't do 7 fishes, you do 3. Maybe you put meat in to satisfy, but you don't throw the whole thing away. Maybe you have to adapt, but don't completely erase the basis of the culture. And one of the bases is family, the importance of family. And that feeling that you had because of the love that your parents and relatives gave you was a very supportive thing in your life. It helped you to be the person you are.
Oh yeah, no, there's no question about that. And they paid attention to us, you know. I don't think, my kids are younger because they're adopted, and they're 28 and 29, and they didn't understand. I think they get it now. At least I hope so anyway.
That must make you feel good because in the beginning it's not easy. You keep on telling them things and they don't react, and then all of a sudden one day they do. One lady was telling me she couldn't believe it. Her grandchildren now are asking her about the seven fishes. They didn't care about it when they were younger. Now that they're 28, they're asking those questions. And she was surprised and very happy.
Yeah, that's good. That's fantastic. So, why and when did you start the museum?
I started the association, the American Italian Heritage Association, in 1979. I taught at a college for 32 years. And when I was out in that area, central New York, near Utica, there was a very large Italian population there. And I began the organization, and we were at one time 3,000 families. Uh, and then eventually I began to realize Italian Americans could learn more about their heritage. So there was an Italian parish with a empty convent, had no money, and went to the priest and I said, could I use this convent? And he was kind enough to let me use the convent without rent, but we had all the expenses. The convent had at one time 18 nuns, so it was a good sized building. And we were in Utica, New York from 1985 to 1998. And Utica, very Italian American city with
Mm.
wonderful traditions and restaurants and pastry. They still have three pastry shops. And in 1999, I was going to retire. My wife is from Schenectady and I'm from Albany. And so she wanted to come back. I hated to leave Utica because it was a wonderful place. I'd made wonderful friends. But the picture was brighter in Albany, which is the state capital of New York State. Many more visitors would come. I looked for 5 years for a building. I had no money to speak of, so I had to put the museum in storage. Then one of our members saw this closed church. It was Our Lady of Mercy. It was built in 1922. It's a mission-style building, very, very, very unique. And that member gave us the mortgage. So we had the ability to buy that building, the rectory, and another building. So we have three buildings on the campus. It took us 5 years. Imagine you buying a car and looking at it and can't use it. We bought the building, had to wait 5 years because of the money that we needed to repair it, and also because the laws in New York State are very strict about fire and handicap. So finally, we opened after 5 years. The building has 2 floors. On the first floor, we have 10 rooms of exhibit, 2 offices, 2 restrooms, a hall of history. On the second floor is our Italian Culture Center, and there we have a chapel, a hall, a library of over 2,000 books on Italian and Italian American topics. We have archives. We have a meeting area. We offer classes, Italian classes. We have a monthly meeting with a cultural speaker. We have an Italian Christmas market. We have an Italian Easter bake sale. We have Italian classes. We have tombola. We have a Practice Your Italian. We have speakers from different areas come into Albany and they say, I have this book, can I tell people about it? So we have those kinds of meetings. So we're more than a museum. Our membership is down, as in all organizations, but we're in 33 states. So we're not a local We're really a national because we have members all over. We also even have a member in Italy.
That's great.
Very happy about that. Most of our members, unfortunately, are only seniors. We do have some young people, but not as many as we need. We're an all volunteer organization because we don't pay anybody. I haven't had a salary since the beginning. It's a hard rock to really raise the money every year. Keeping 3 buildings going and a building that's 1922 is always repairs. But we do have a dedicated group of volunteers, and we try very hard to reach out to the community. This month we'll be at a local high school putting on an exhibit about our heritage. We're working with the Ulster County Italian American Foundation. They're going to put on a fashion show, and we're going to take some of the items from our museum and add it to their show and have a table and an exhibit. We were in part of the Festival of Nations, which is about 33 countries put on each year a festival, and we represent Italy. So those are just some of the things that we do.
Oh, that's a lot. That's funny. So are you guys in New Jersey? Do you have a?
I'm in Albany, New York.
I know, but you said you're in like 33 states or something like that you
Oh,
have
well, yeah.
representation.
Oh, yeah, we have a number of members in New Jersey. And we have, interesting enough, we have members in the South and California. It's just wonderful that people, I'm a member of the Sons of Italy as well as many other Italian organizations, and I write for their newspaper. And I write articles for other newspapers. So I've been doing things that have brought people from outside the state to know about us. We were recognized by the Albany Historical Association for the unique building that we have and turning a church into a museum. We received that honor. So being a former marketing professor, I know how to market, and I try to get the message out with a lot of promotion. We have 2 Facebook pages. Post. I publish a bi-monthly newsletter to our members. We have an email newsletter that's on the computer, and we go out to the community and set up exhibits and tell people. We have a speakers bureau, so I'm out sometimes speaking to groups, telling them about the museum. And basically, I'm trying to tell people to treasure your heritage no matter what it is. We just had a bus trip of 28 people, seniors, and one of my introductions was this museum honors the Italian immigrants, tells their story, and the contribution of Italian Americans. And the immigrant story is a story of your family too, because no matter what ethnic group you have, what the Italian immigrants experience, often other groups as well. We especially suffered discrimination. We had the second most lynching of any people in the country after African Americans. Many people changed their name. The constant mafia, the movie fixation is unbelievable. So we have a lot of issues, and I think what we need to do is to learn more about our heritage. We've made such a contribution to this country. And my next newsletter, America is a wonderful Italian name.
Yes, it is. My father's middle name was Americus because he was the only boy born here. My 3 oldest aunts and uncles were born in Italy, and then my father's next to oldest sister, well, one of the sister before him was born in America, and he was born in America. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we're in the process, myself and a couple other, fairly well-known people. We're working on a documentary, just exactly what you're talking about. The rich heritage. People don't realize that, an Italian American had Thomas Jefferson's ear, right? People don't know that there were Italians that fought in almost every single war.
Yeah, My article in the Sons of Italy Golden Line is amazing what our contribution is.
Mhm.
And I list some of the things that you're just talking about. We There were Italian Americans that fought in the Revolutionary War.
That's right.
And Italian Americans at that time who lived in the United States who fought and received great honors. If only people knew our contribution, it's just amazing because we were so few at that time, yet our contribution is so significant. And the words "all men created equal" was an Italian who said those words that Thomas Jefferson put in the Constitution, reworded a little bit, but it's in. And Thomas Jefferson spoke Italian.
That I didn't know. I guess
Yeah,
his good friend was Italian, so yeah. So
it's not.
that's the stuff. That's the stuff. I've interviewed some great people on that, and uh, you know, uh, Lou Del Bianco, the grandson of Luigi Del Bianco, who carved Mount Rushmore, and that's a fascinating story. And
Yes.
I stumbled upon, and I never knew this. There was I can't. The name escapes me. It begins with a C. Her ancestor, her great grandfather, built 300 apartment buildings in New York City. Capello, I think it is, or Capella. I grew up in New York City. I worked in New York City. I had no idea that this family built, all of these classic buildings in New York City. But yeah, to your point, that's what I'm trying to do this. I want the younger people to understand that we're not just Tarantella pizza and mafia.
We have so many traditions that are one of my things that I get on the soapbox is keep our traditions alive. They're so rich. My grandmother, every time you look around, we were celebrating something, and it just enriched our lives. And St. Lucie Day, St. Joseph Day, it's just every food traditions, family traditions. Wrote an article about Italian weddings in
Hmm.
the old days, well, how unique they were, and how the ladies would take the Italian cookies and put them in their pocketbook. Such interesting stories about those people. They're gone, but they'll never be out of my mind. They were so colorful and rich in their many, many ways. And we owe them so much.
Well, even in the 70s, they were still putting the almonds and tying them up in the little net and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
You know
Right.
that that's all disappeared. Um, but my grandfather, my father's father, and his brother, they made bridal veils and crowns in New York City in the 20s, 30s, up until the 50s. They were, my grandfather died early, 1951, but his brother had the business going at least through the 50s and maybe even into the early 60s. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, you're right. Those traditions are golden to me. And I tell people now, if anybody asks, about starting, I said, you have to ask your grandmother. Sit down. Now you have the luxury of being able to record her.
Yeah, but so many questions that I could have answered, I didn't. I
I know.
wanted to tell you, we have a thrift shop and a bridal shop that help us to raise money. And the bridal shop has been really interesting because they're wonderful at a very low price.
Hmm.
So that's another thing that we do. But getting back to what you just said about asking questions now, don't wait, because when people pass away, you don't have the answers. My grandfather, I have a picture, a great grandfather, I have a picture. He has three medals, and I don't know what they're for.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's no one I can ask. I could have asked my grandfather. Did grandpa fight in the war? Is that why he has those three medals? So that's a lost thing that I really regret. Um, uh, but I just,
Yeah, no, that's the same. I heard one of my cousins on my father's side, supposedly she had a lot of stuff and she moved to Florida and she had all this stuff in the garage and it just got disintegrated, between the moisture and the heat and all of that kind of stuff. And then one of I guess just before I started this, two of the family historians from my grandmother's family uh had passed away, and one supposedly had a lot of stuff and the other one had a lot of stories. And but when you're a kid, you don't think to ask those questions. I used to play cards with my mother's mother every week. We used to sit there and play Italian cards. I never thought to ask her about Italy. Uh, and my father's mother comes from two noble families, and I had I had a little bit of an idea, but when I started doing the research, I had no idea what I was going to find. And then I asked one of my older cousins who lived with my grandmother, and they said, "Oh yeah, sure." I said, "Well, didn't she talk about this stuff? Or didn't anybody ask?" And they didn't. And I found out that she kept in touch, and even my oldest aunt, my godmother, they kept in touch with the people in Italy up until the 70s. I had no idea that I had so many cousins and close cousins. My father's first cousins are still alive. They're in their 90s, but they're still alive. And we met them a couple of years ago when we went. And it was fascinating because they had my parents' wedding photo that my grandmother had sent in 1944. My grandmother's handwriting on the back in Italian and all of that kind of stuff. So, you uncover so much stuff. So I wanted to ask you, so where do you get, well, two things. One is, where do you get all the items from that you have in your various collections? And then also, I'm now the chairman for my Italian club for the cultural committee. So if you have any people in New Jersey that want to present or do anything like that, if you drop me a line in an email, I'll look them up and I'll get them into the club.
Good. Well, first of all, my wife wants to die first because I'm a collector. You should see what I collected. When I opened the museum, I had some things. I had visited Italy twice. Utica, a lot of people gave us lots of items, so we brought that to the museum. And every month or so, people are bringing things to us. The problem is that we were running out of room. So we're very selective. There's certain things that we still can use, but a lot of times it's a replica or a duplicate of what already had. We do have an archives because I can't stand to have somebody throw it away. So we put it away, and when we have a special exhibit or I go out to an exhibit, I have this archives where I can take the things and show people. And then when we have a special exhibit, I can go up there and bring it into the museum. People come in with family pictures, like their grandma, and they'll say the kids don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's going to happen when the mother and father dies? They're going to throw it away. You see that all the time. It's a shame that we have not instilled in young people the value. In my home, I have my great grandparents' picture, my grandfather's picture hanging, and when I pass, I'm going to give it to the museum because of the unique story behind those pictures. But the thing is that our museum with the 10 rooms, there's a lot of interesting things that we still don't have. For example, we have a beautiful Italian folk art room, and most of the folk art that we have is from southern Italy. I've been trying to get more folk art from northern Italy, and it's been hard because there's not as many Italian northern societies. They're not as interested in, I guess, folk art as the South is. But I would like to enlarge that exhibit. Another thing is that you never know who's going to walk through the door with something interesting. And a Jewish couple gave us 4 puppets, Sicilian puppets, 1909. He had bought them for his children when they were kids, and they're almost, 5 feet tall.
Wow, that's cool.
Jewish couple.
Yeah.
By the way, we have a rabbi who's a member, Italian American, excuse me, he's married to a rabbi, and we're going to have a video of our museum in Italy done by an Italian American rabbi. But we've done some really interesting outreaches to other ethnic groups, like Armenian and Greek and whatever, and that's been a wonderful experience too. We tried to do a lot of community relation things and reaching out to the community, building good rapport between our museum and the community.
Yeah, well, I think that's important to do that for sure. Yeah, one interesting story that I heard was about the Jewish couple who helped save a church in Brooklyn. The Uberalls. Do you know that story?
Oh,
Yeah, I'll send you the
right.
story. But he was going to lose the little storefront that they had, and this Jewish couple helped him out. 25 years later, the man's family it was 1939. They were stuck in Austria, and they were trying to get him out. He had passed away, and the woman somebody told her to go to Cuba. They could help. She gets off the plane in Cuba, and the priest who she helped save the church is now cardinal. He's the papal nuncio to Pius XII. He brought 39 people from Germany, housed them, fed them, took care of them until the war was over.
We have an example called a room called The Faith of Our Ancestors, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, Jewish exhibits in that room. So we have an exhibit about the Italian American Jews. As a result of this member who's Jewish and Italian, he was born in Italy, he's given us items of the Jewish faith and the rabbi in Italy as well. So we're probably the only Italian American museum with an exhibit of the Jewish faith in our museum.
That's cool. That's really cool. People, again, that's another thing people don't realize, that they're Italian Jews.
Right. And we mostly is Catholic, of course. We also have some members who are Italian Baptists, and their father was a minister, so they gave us some really old photos of a Baptist church in New York City. So these items are unique because they're going to be lost forever, and they tell a story that, when the Italians came here, they came from all parts of Italy, and there were different religions as well. And I think we're leaving a legacy for future generations. The hope is that by our generation not giving up the fight, that there will be future Italian Americans that will love their heritage enough to keep our institutions alive. You well know we've lost so many Italian parishes, societies, organizations, and it's not only true of us, but other groups as well, because young people are not joiners. So we're going to get people to start realizing that if you say you're proud to be Italian and you love your heritage, do something about it. Words are not enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we go, if people want to get in touch with you or they want to visit the museum, how would they find you? How do they find the museum?
Okay, we're at 1227 Central Avenue in Albany, New York, American Italian Heritage Museum. We have two Facebooks, and one's called Friends of the American Italian Heritage Museum, and the other one is American Italian Heritage Museum. Our email is info@AmericanItalianMuseum. We have a website that's very beautiful, well done. You learn all about the classes we offer, some of our photos, some of the videos, and that is www.info.AmericanItalianMuseum.org. And our phone number is 518-435-0591.
Okay, that's great. That's super. And I'll put all of that in the text, and also put it up on the screen for you. Well, listen, Phil, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking the time.
It was nice talking to you, and have a wonderful day. God bless. Ciao.